All right, guys. Today we're going to be talking about ground ambulance operations, and kind of want to give you guys a heads up about this. In the syllabus, actually, I'm not supposed to lecture on these at all. I decided to go ahead and make videos of them. They're very simple, very quick, very short, and it's just a review of material that you guys need to know and kind of some reminders about when you're operating a ground ambulance. And so again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this topic, but again, I want to make sure that we go over some of the fundamentals, things that you might see on the test that you should probably know about. The ambulance standards usually falls to state governments. Okay, so the state of Florida, for our case, is the one that determines what should and shouldn't be on the ambulance. They define these things. The national standard and trends have influenced the development of the laws, though. The actual training falls under the Department of Transportation for the U.S. government, but the actual certifications and regulations and administrative code actually falls under the states usually. So state laws are usually broad to corresponding regulations, and to complicate this even further, each municipality, each county may also have their own regulations that govern EMS. Okay, the state standards tend to be generic and flexible, politically feasible to all EMS agencies throughout the state. Again, the state will set a minimum set of standards rather than the gold standard for operation, and I think that's probably, it has its goods, but if you got somebody who's not involved in your EMS system, or it can be abused. Let me just say it that way. So again, the U.S. General Standard, DOT, the KKK 1822F standard, might want to remember that number because again, it's the federal regulations that have to do with the safety standards of the ambulances. And these constantly go through revisions, and they can also change on you. And I'll give you a perfect example. The being able to secure the patient onto the deck of the ambulance, the stretcher actually securing to the deck, that's recently changed within the last 4 to 5 years, and manufacturers had to come up with new building practices in order to make that happen. So ambulance design, type 1, type 2, type 3s. They say that this is a type 1, but this is also known more as a heavy rescue. If it had an F350 chassis or a truck chassis on the front, the key thing is here, there's only the little window in between the box and the front of the unit. Okay. A type 2 ambulance, that's your van type ambulance, and again, it's a unibodied ambulance manufacturer at that. So again, this is you can get from the front to the back of this with no problem. So the Type 3 ambulance, by the way, and I kind of find this funny because this actual particular ambulance has only got the hole in between it. Actually, a Type 3 ambulance is a van-style ambulance that has a complete pathway to the back. Okay, and so this is actually a Type 1 ambulance. The picture that they're showing here, it's actually a Type 1 because it's only got the small window. Yeah, a true Type 3, you would be able to go from the front to the back of the cab. Again, Type 2s, again, is all one unibody, where this one actually has a box on the back, but the pathway is in between. Now, again, the medium-duty ambulances, that picture they showed were the Class 1, these are actually medium duties. And the federal again, the gross weight is 24,000. They're actually made for heavier loads, and they actually last a lot longer, which is why you see a lot of departments using that heavier style of ambulance to do that. And again, this is, again, a medium-duty rescue vehicle, but look at the wheelbase on this thing. Good Lord Almighty. It'll take you a half day to turn the thing. So again, ambulance design, remember DOT is the agency and the national organization that influences the standards. And there has been, in the last year, 10 years, a real push to improve the safety of these ground ambulances. Okay, so this is actually a true Type 3 ambulance, by the way. So this is a Type 3 style ambulance. I guess they flipped the pictures or something. And again, one of the things also is you're seeing a lot more of this seat design. A lot of the ambulances had a bench seat in order that you could have 2 patients be transported in the back. Nowadays, I hate to say it, yeah, this is probably more and the other thing that's coming into play is the restraint systems, where you're actually in a restraint as you're moving around the back of the ambulance. But there's a lot more about the safety harnesses that are there. My problem with the safety harness is that sometimes we'll get in the way. But again, I've also been upside down in an ambulance, so I completely 100% understand. And truth be known, I grew up in an era where you were expected to do things on the way to the hospital. And again, I think that's part of the danger of our job. But again, when possible, we need to be using our safety equipment. Okay. We really do. And I think that is, get the things done, sticking a patient that we can sit on the scene when we've got time. That's okay to do. But the other thing is know the difference of when to stay and play and when to load and go. Okay. Again, OSHA does actually, I kind of joke about the OSHA standards. OSHA standards are written by guys that have never been in the back of an ambulance. But they do the disinfecting agents, the sharps containers, the red bags, the HEPA mask, and the personal protective equipment. So again, and then NIOSH established the standards. Both of those regulatory agencies actually can come in and do their own separate investigations. Okay. Medical equipment standard, usually the local ordinance or the local or even the state. The state does have a list in the state of Florida of minimum equipment that you must carry on both a BLS and an ALS ambulance. Local medical direction, they're the ones that very specifically do the ALS care and the supplies that should be on every ambulance. Additional guidelines, so the Commission of Accreditation of Ambulance Services is the voluntary gold standard, the key thing being voluntary. I think it's a good practice that if you live up to those standards, actually, truth be known, you probably got a decent organization and service. But again, I hate to say this, it's a lot of checkbox filling. If you truly do what you're supposed to do, then yeah, that is the gold standard and is what you should be. And you make sure that you have your equipment and the things that you need to comply with local state. So when you come on duty, the number one thing you should be doing is checking your equipment. You should be replacing your equipment after every call. But when you come on duty, you need to make sure everything's there where it's supposed to be and all the supplies are there when you need it. Make sure that everything is there. Do not overstock your truck. I don't want to go get supplies every 5 minutes, so I'm going to, sneak a couple extra bags on there. No, because then again, that takes away from your systems overall, especially when you have a shortage of things. Ensure mechanical maintenance and availability of personal protective equipment. Make sure everything's there. Make sure everything's working. Test it. These people that go out there and in 5 minutes check off their truck, I want to shoot them. Okay? Seriously, guys. It should take you at a bare minimum to make sure you got everything about 30 minutes. If you're testing everything like you should be in the back of that truck from anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour. Okay. You really should. And any of the students that have ever worked with me, they will know that we go through that truck up and down, forwards and backwards. That includes the ALS side and the BLS side. There's nothing worse than getting the traction splint out and you're missing the ankle hitch. That a perfect example of that. Okay. So again, check it. Use a checklist. Okay. And you need to make sure everything is there. Make sure the things that you need to grab quickly are there. I always make sure that my suction is right there. It's ready to go, where all I got to do is pull it out, turn it on. Okay. That a perfect example of that. Okay. You need to make sure everything, again, make sure your defibrillator, make sure you have charged batteries, make sure that your systems are plugged in. If it is a plug-in system, make sure the battery can actually run for a little bit. Run your portable suction for a good 5 minutes to make sure that it'll go, and then plug it back in and let it recharge. Okay. So again, that helps with again, there ain't nothing worse than being in the middle of an airway procedure and you having to suck something out and your suction goes, okay. Make sure you got everything. Again, use the checklist. I can't stress that enough. Use the checklist. Go down that checklist. Even if it's an electronic checklist, go down it. Don't pencil whip it. Go down. If you see something on there, check it. And if you know it's missing, get it replaced. And if they won't replace it, make darn sure everybody knows you were missing it. Okay? Because what's the first thing that an organization will do is, well, they're supposed to check the truck. They didn't check the truck. So guess what? It's on them. Make darn sure that the appropriate people, supervision, knows that you're missing stuff. Okay? Make sure that you do all your scheduled tests, measures, calibrations on your medical equipment. If you look down at the sticker on your monitor and says it was last checked 3 years ago, and the manufacturer says that every 6 months it's supposed to be checked, there's a problem. Okay. By the way, good luck on trying to win defend against a lawsuit with that sticker being bad, because the first thing that they're going to want to do is they're going to want records on everything. Okay. Your medical equipment, these are all the things, again, you should have on the truck. I'm not going to go through all these, but I will tell you this, again, it's very important that you make sure that you have all the equipment. Ambulance development and deployment and staffing. Okay. Yes, there are places in the world where you don't have a station. You go and pick up your truck at, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning. That's the time you come on shift. And you actually drive around the county until you get a call. They'll tell you where to go, a post. And they'll say, be at the corner of 35th Street and 441. Yeah, well, you can go up to 329 and 441. You know what? We don't need you down there now anymore. We need you out in the forest. And guys, I will tell you that type of system is extremely crew intensive. Okay. And the idea is you put the ambulances where the calls are at. I can tell you that there are still places where that's done. Pinellas County does, I can tell you right now. But again, they have a really cool dynamic they have a middle artery, Highway 19, that runs the length of the county. Pretty much you can get to either side of it within 10 minutes. So at that point, you just got to kind of position your ambulances to get out to those areas in the 10-minute mark. Okay. So, and again, the idea is it helps reduce response times, and you need to make sure that, they'll put these ambulances anywhere, but you usually put the ambulances where the calls are at. Okay. I will tell you, I've worked in both systems. I won't lie, I prefer the station, but there are advantages to having a deployment. And by the way, the flexible staffing. I truly believe that if you are on a transport truck, the older and older I get, again, if you're running more than 6 calls a shift, quite frankly, I don't believe that you should be on the 24-hour model. You should be on a 12-hour model, period. Well, 6 calls isn't that much, Scott. Yeah, well, it depends. If you're 6 calls and it takes you 3 hours to transport, yeah, that's 18 hours out. That's a lot of calls, okay? And so a lot of systems have gone to a 12-hour deployment. And again, here's the long and the short, gang, and I can pull this data up for almost any place. If you look at the call load at 12 o'clock in the afternoon versus 12 o'clock in the morning, there's a marked difference. There's a lot more calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon than there are at 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. We should be shifting our human resources to meet those needs. Okay. Now that's what everybody goes, I have to work more. Well, no, the thing is you guys should be able to work less hours and then be compensated the same. Okay. We're getting there. All right. So deployment, again, these deployment plans, and I've actually been a part of actually designing these. You put the ambulances where the calls are. Okay. That peak load staffing, if you will. And I believe I know that a lot of agencies are now starting to go to this because, again, we have more calls in the afternoon and the early evening than we do at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Now, primary areas of responsibility is deploy the ambulances and wait for the calls. And then, so again, that's the idea behind the system status management. There's computerized, and system status management does it via computer with a plan. Or as we used to call it, Satan status mismanagement. Guys, again, it is very crew intensive. If you've got a 12-hour crew, that's something completely different than somebody on duty for 24 hours. I think doing system status on a 24-hour is absolute insanity. absolute craziness. Okay. Again, we got to remember that you got traffic congestion. For those of you that work in the field, it's a lot easier to get the calls at 2 o'clock in the morning than it is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Response times of less than 4 minutes is associated with improved outcomes. And that's so very true. The reality of it, I'm not going to get to a call in Scrambletown in 4 minutes. For those of you that know where Scrambletown is, it's in the middle of the forest between Newby's Corner or Forest Corners and Salt Springs. Okay, so they usually determine these response times by geographic location. I think that while you're inside a major city area, I think a 4-minute response time is not a bad thing. That's what you should be striving to go towards. Again, secondary ALS should be there within 8 minutes. But again, a first response unit should be able to get to any area call in their area. Usually the 4-minute mark is kind of for an urban area that's kind of normal. Operational staffing, again, each service has to determine that, okay? And I will tell you this, Marion County has actually made some pretty big strides on this, okay? They need to know actually operating, they determine the vehicles. I will tell you in the state of Florida, to determine whether or not to be an ambulance driver, for an ALS driver, you have to be an EMT. For a BLS unit, it only has to be a first responder. That is state statute. Educating your providers, okay? Remember, recognition, we constantly do continuing education, okay? And by the way, we have to do that. Our business changes. Our situations change. If you'd have told me 20 years ago that we would have a narcotic problem, I would giggle at you. Nowadays, or if you were to tell me 20 years ago that we're going to give cops Narcan and let them squirt it up people's nose, I would have laughed at you. Nowadays, kind of commonplace, okay? So again, ambulances are increasing inside of the weight. So again, you got to make sure that you know your truck, and you got to know what it can and can't do. A lot of these bigger rescues are actually driven more like a large fire engine than they are an actual a ambulance or a van ambulance, okay? A lot of collisions take place on clear days during daylight hours when you think that you wouldn't have an ambulance collision. Okay, why is that? Because people are distracted, they're not paying attention, there's too many stimulus around them. Again, the largest number, the ambulance strike another vehicle or a right angle or struck itself. They didn't, again, make sure that the intersection was clear. And 3/4 of all collisions take place in an intersection. Oh, imagine that. So again, guys, intersections are bad, okay? So the way that we do this is collision preventing is determined where we want to make sure where is it these collisions are coming from and the ways that we can prevent it. Again, make sure that you got hands-on driver training, and you should be doing that. You should be able to master your vehicle. You should not be driving an ambulance unless you can master that vehicle and know what it can and cannot do, okay? Standard operating procedures, okay? These are how you actually operate and these I can pretty much tell you are not guidelines, they are procedures, okay? So in other words, you're cranking the truck, you're checking off the truck. All of these things are procedural things that you really need to do. And I can guarantee you're going to be held to that standard, okay? Always, 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 always have a backer if you're backing an ambulance up, okay? Always have a backer. Watch your backer. Even though you as a driver are responsible, make sure you got a backer, okay? Make sure that you have one and do it properly, okay? Again, you should not be going to work intoxicated or impaired, period. And if you are, you need to be smart enough to go, I need to get off the truck, okay? And I will tell you right now, under the influence of alcohol or drugs, you're not going to find any tolerance on that, all right? Due regard. A lot of the states say that you can proceed with all due haste as long as you use due regard, okay? So, again, it holds them to a higher standard. However, it does do a little bit of protection for liability purposes, okay? And these, again, you want, truth be known, the lights and sirens on your ambulance or fire truck or any other emergency vehicle doesn't give you the right to exceed the speed limit. And again, it doesn't allow you to go the wrong way down a one-way street. It does allow you, It does allow you to park in other places that you would normally. So requirements to wait at red lights. So guys, again, you got to make sure that you use due regard when you're going to go violating these things. You got to make sure that you are doing it correctly and with everybody's safety in mind. Okay. You are not exempt from passing a railroad. I will give you a hint. Railroad, a train versus an ambulance. The train is going to never lose. Never. All right. School buses. Again, turn your equipment off, especially if they're unloading kids. Turn the siren off. Turn the equipment off. The bus drivers, I assure you, will see you. They'll get off the way as soon as you safely pass them, re-engage and go code 3, okay? Kids do stupid things when they hear lights and sirens, okay? Always assume that the idiot in the other car is going to do the absolute dumbest thing possible, because that's probably what they're going to do, okay? You are held to the higher standard, I assure you. So make sure, assume that they're going to do something crazy and stupid, all right? Guys, again, you do not rely on your lights and sirens to alert motorists. Guys, many right-of-way privileges are given to ambulance when are abused when the lights and sirens are sounded, okay? And by the way, if you've ever ridden in an ambulance, you know that you can get right up on somebody's butt with the siren going, and to be honest, they can't hear you, okay? Usually, by the way, inexperienced at 10 to 15 miles an hour when the siren is sounded, keep in control of your vehicle, okay? Whatever emergency it is, it's their emergency, not yours. Breaking those rules will make it your emergency when that idiot does something stupid, okay? People panic when they see the lights and sirens, okay? Be prepared for that panic and be ready. Don't be riding up somebody's butt, because the first thing they're going to do the second they see the lights and sirens is hit the brake. And guess what? If you're on their butt, you're going to be eating in their tailboard. And you're no good if you get in an accident yourself. All right? Assume some motorists will hear the sirens but choose to ignore it. That is a true reality. There are people that actually do it. Okay? And again, whenever your ambulance is on the road day or night, turn the headlights off. Turn your headlights on to increase visibility, okay? If you're on an emergency scene, though, I would highly recommend, depending upon the scene, if your lights are going into oncoming traffic, I would consider maybe going to my secondaries and turning my headlights to an off position. Again, I think that's situationally dependent. If I need my headlights to see a wreck scene, that's something that's completely different, okay? More importantly is visibility. You want to have visibility for your motorists and pedestrians. And again, we have the benefit of having lights and sirens not offset the risk of the crew. Again, if you've got somebody who is following behind you, God forbid if you're given an escort by the police department. I think that is one of the most dangerous things you can probably do, because they'll see the cop, they won't see you. So they think it's okay to go through, and pow, you get nailed, okay? If you've got somebody following you, by the way, I highly, highly, highly recommend you stop, go back to code 1. If it continues, pull over and tell the people not to follow you, that you are slowing us down from getting to the hospital. Folks, they don't see the trailing car behind you. So now you've got two problems, okay? Guys, I have literally stopped my ambulance, got out of the back of the truck, and told the person, turn that off, quit following us, or you're going to get killed, okay? And that is the unfortunate reality. And if they won't stop, go code 1. Go without your lights and sirens on, okay? Is it going to slow down your response? Absolutely. But I guarantee you, at least everybody will arrive alive, okay? And again, I have zero problem pulling off the side of the road and going, quit following, because you're slowing us down, okay? When you get into, again, motorists don't realize that two emergency vehicles are traveling together. Again, that doing the escort thing is crazy. If you're parking and loading the ambulance, make sure that you kind of want to stay away about 100 feet from the scene. You want to make sure that you're uphill, upwind, especially when you're dealing with hazardous material situations, park your truck where it's going to be safe, okay? And if possible, assign crew members to handle traffic until the police get there, again, if possible, okay? And usually you park in front of the wreckage, and let me show you an example there. You can set up cones. I usually put the fire truck in front of the wreck, and then the ambulance behind the wreck. And the reason that I do that or if I've got another emergency vehicle, I let them block off the traffic. I kind of go with the mantra, the bigger truck gets to block traffic, okay? And by the way, I can tell you that there's been multiple instances where trucks get hit, but the people that were in the wreck or working the emergency scene are okay. We can replace the apparatus. We can't replace the person, okay? About flares, I would probably try to use cones before I use flares. Again, there's the whole, if you set off a flare and there's something flammable there, poof, congratulations. Now we got a fire scene. For some of you guys, I'm sure you would absolutely love that, but again, we really don't want to do that. Try not to expose your crew or patient to traffic. And again, the rear ambulance doors often obstruct the warning lights, so keep that in mind. And again, red revolving lights attract drunks or tired drivers. Okay, kind of keep that in mind. So when you're working on the scenes, again, I usually go to my, I make sure that I'm seen, but at the same time, you don't want to cause so much that it causes a distraction. There is and then again, whenever you're going through when you're going through an intersection, I always, number one, you always stop at the red lights or stop signs. You always do that. I actually look at everybody to make sure that they see me. If they don't see me, I may creep or not go into the intersection until I think that I make sure that I've got everybody targeted and seen, okay? So that way they know what direction you're going. Don't blow through a freaking intersection, okay? That is the most dangerous thing that you could do, and I have been to way too many wrecks with ambulances, people that did just that, okay? Again, the lights and sirens are only permission for them to yield the right of way. Assume that they're going to do the exact opposite until you are a complete understanding that you've got it. All right. One other thing about intersections, trucks, heavy trucks, just remember that they can't stop as quick as you can. And by the way, your big old ambulance, it doesn't stop as fast as you think. And if you do, you're probably tumbling over the paramedic or whoever is working in the back. Okay? So take it slow. Just because you got the lights and sirens on doesn't mean you drive like an idiot. Okay? Sometimes, guys, going a standard speed, even with the lights and sirens on, is going to be faster. I assure you of it. You don't think that it is, but it is. Okay? So, guys, make sure that you review this material. Make sure you read your book. Again, a short quiz on this online. We're not really going to go over this in the classroom. We're going to kind of review it towards when we get closer to the National Registry. So you got to know what your stuff does. You got to know how your equipment operates. That includes your ambulance. You got to check it off. You got to maintenance it. You got to make sure everything working. Otherwise, it's not even worth having on the truck. Okay, it's not even worth responding to the ambulance. All right, because you got to have tools that you need. Check your truck. Check your truck. Check your truck. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.